Sometimes all you have are scraps, mere threads of something that once was, barely enough to remember the story or the person or the place, barely enough to recreate the moment or the feeling or the memory, barely enough to rededicate a home or a temple or a heart. Hanukkah celebrates a story of liberation of the Jewish people who had been ruled by a tyrant from Damascus, forcing them to worship Greek gods. Jewish rebels fought for 3 years to reclaim the temple, and they needed oil to light the eternal flame of the ritual of rededication. Only had enough for one night. The miracle was the oil lasted for 8 nights. The miracle, writes Mark Bellatini, is not that the oil lasts, but that our hope lasts. Not that the fire illumines, but that we grow brighter. Not that ancient stories are told, but people are willing to live their own stories. Not that tyranny is resisted, but that resistance itself recreates people. It's not a certain definition of a miracle that will bring clarity to one's life or one's religious perspective, but the story and the mystery surrounding the miracle invites one to stop. In the words that Amy read to us from Charles Resnikoff, to stop in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, each day, and look out upon eternity for a while. Rabbi Rachel Ranblatt, who also calls herself the Velveteen Rabbi, writes these words for Hanukkah. She says, "Some days I can enter the Holy of Holies by snapping my fingers and the door swings open. And other days, I have to ransack every pocket to find the key. And when I finally get inside, the room is darkened. There's mud on the floor. The intricate altar is grimy and askew, its heartbeat silenced. I sweep the ashes away, open my thermos of tea, rehang the tapestries, great branches arcing. At last, I light the lamp. The glint, the glow, regenerating, the home fire eternally burning. I learn to trust again that this oil is enough to open my eyes to God who is already here." Perhaps the miracle is not that something happened that is out of the ordinary, something that was unexpected or considered impossible in the physics of the world, but maybe it was something deeper, something truer, more lasting, more enduring for the human spirit and the human soul. Maybe it's like the words of poet Hilda Morley that Hanukkah simply lifts up the truth that the smallest drop of fuel can be enough to leap from. When all you have are scraps and you can't find the key to the temple in your pocket, when you don't have everything that you think you need to have, that you must find on your own, maybe that's when the miracle happens. Maybe you remember in the movie It's a Wonderful Life, George Bailey, when the town is afraid of banks closing down, there's a large group of people that rushes the old building and loan cooperative, demanding to receive their funds out of what they have saved there. And George Bailey responds, "You're thinking of this place all wrong, as if I had the money back here in a safe. The money's not here. Well, it's in your house, and it's in Joe's house, which is right next to yours. It's in the Kennedy's house, it's in Mrs. Macklin's house, and 100 other houses." The miracle is that our common wealth, our common wholeness and survival and health and well-being is in the reality of our shared humanity, that our very lives live within the lives of others. We each have something important to offer that may seem like just a scrap, something insignificant, something not worth sharing, something that won't make a difference, something seemingly real simple, real small. But we know deep down that the larger story of our shared life on this planet, our shared humanity, needs to be reopened, rekindled, constantly and always by the testimony and witness of each other telling our own stories about our identity, about our hopes for this world. I believe that's one reason why Time Magazine's Person of the Year is not one person for 2017. You may have already read that this year's Person of the Year are the Silence Breakers. those who have told their stories around sexual harassment and assault, their stories of marginalization and objectification, their stories of being fearful to tell any stories at all because of the attack it would bring on their character or their family, because of the likelihood of losing credibility and access in their career and thus their jobs and income, the fear of being walled out of their profession, their stories of being taught to be silent, that girls ought to be kind and quiet and nice. One story led to another story, what Time authors Stephanie Zacharek, Eliana Docterman, and Haley Sweetland Edwards called a revolution of refusal that has opened conversation. It's allowed some space, even limited still, for more testimony and more stories, resulting in some, but limited still, real change for those in power. Celebrities, politicians, CEOs, not nearly close to enough, but a public beginning. They write, this reckoning appears to have sprung up overnight, but has actually been simmering for years and decades and centuries. The women and men who have broken their silence span all races, all income classes, all occupations, all corners of the globe. They write they might labor in California fields or behind the front desk at New York City's Plaza Hotel or in the European Parliament. They're part of a movement that has no formal name, but now they have a voice. This is one way how collective power happens. One story lets another story feel more free to be told. Something that has been simmering for years or decades or centuries, something that has been known and named actually many times before, but the time and the moment, the courage and clarity come together somehow to spark the simmer into a flame, to shine light on injustice, to shine light on overt and subtle cultural norms of oppression, the real impact of sexism in the microaggressions that are not new but have been simmering for centuries. And even in their choosing, the founder of the Me Too campaign, Tarana Burke, a woman of color who started it well over 10 years ago, while she was featured in the article, she was not chosen for the cover itself. She wasn't chosen to be pictured for the very movement she helped and really on her own created, likely to sell more magazines by picturing and leaving space on the cover for celebrities. The forces of the market, the systems and structures of socialization of what grabs our attention in the public square is a whole sub-story worth noting and paying attention to, amplified by the cover of the magazine itself. Speaking about the various and intersecting justice movements regarding sexism and racism and classism, activist Adrienne Marie Brown wrote, "Things are not getting worse. They are getting uncovered. We have to hold each other tight and continue to pull back the veil. Things are not getting worse, they are getting uncovered." Maybe we've been thinking about it all wrong. Maybe the reckoning in our wider culture, small as it is, but a beginning, is absolutely what has been needed for centuries and millennia and has been happening in small and large ways. Maybe we've had all these larger-than-life stories wrong all this time. Maybe the oil is not just kept back behind the altar somewhere, but it comes a little bit at a time, each person bringing their own portion to enter into the temple, pour it into the lamp, rededicating their hearts to one another and to become a living shawl of prayer to their neighbor. Maybe the loaves and fishes didn't magically feed 5,000 people, but people's hearts were opened with compassion by the stories they heard of hunger, and they uncovered their own baskets that they had been keeping behind them, hiding out of fear of starvation, and they were inspired by what someone else shared in testimony, and they opened their baskets, and a table was spread until enough people could eat. Maybe just one bombshell of a story or one messiah of a person isn't just going to knock on the door and smash the powers that be in one fell swoop, in one dramatic news cycle. Maybe it takes everyone daring to live their own stories, to share each seemingly insignificant story until it adds to the larger story that the whole world might notice, at least for a time. It takes everyday common people testifying to their truth and their experience to begin writing a new narrative that is not based in fear, but held up by solidarity and strength and community. That takes a miracle. And it's happening. It takes a miracle of witness and strength and courage for those on the margins to tell their stories. It takes a miracle of humility, self-imposed or otherwise, for those with immense privilege to know it and name it and do their part in deep listening, strong support of the marginalized, to continually reflect on how their actions, their words, their lives either perpetuate or help dismantle centuries-old systems of oppression. To live in a way that their access and their privilege and their voice creates more space for other voices, other than their own, so that other people's agency and power might more brightly shine, to get out of the way sometimes. That takes a miracle. But I'm beginning to believe in miracles a little bit. Maybe the miracle is an opening of the heart in the face of constriction, an opening of generosity in the face of scarcity and fear. Maybe the miracle is seeing again hope and possibility for the return of light in the midst of darkness. People began gathering their scraps, bringing out every small drop of oil that they had protected and saved, lest it be squandered or taken or lost, and together every drop of oil, every opening of the heart, every moment of giving and generosity and community is enough to light up a temple, both the building and the heart. When all you need is just enough to leap from, just enough for a spark, then each little simple gift that you were convinced didn't matter, wouldn't make a difference, can be recreated, reformed into something larger than itself. What began as a shirt and was cut into rags can be regathered into something larger, woven together into something deeper, more powerful than just some scrap. When you put the scraps together, there can be cloth and fabric enough to hold you, to gather all the stories, pull back the veil, add more and more, each bringing what they have to offer from their own life. When you gather together every drop of oil that's coming into the temple, you realize that it is the common shared lamp that you need to keep the flame lit and keep the light shining. Our closing hymn is 221, Light One Candle. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit.